What you're seeing there right behind me is a piece of art by Radhika Sharma. This is the map of Maharashtra, and it's made in grains, which is actually silver. So it looks like it's pieces of rice or grains of rice, but it's not. It's silver that's rolled to be made to look like rice. And she's done this because Maharashtra has had this notorious image of being the capital of suicides and farmer suicides in the country of India, and particularly Vidarbha district, which has been drought prone. But why I'm talking about this in detail is because I am just so curious to know whether anything and everything as an attempt to be made to bring the farmer crisis to the top headlines, and for the media, for the government to be talking about it, has become impendable now. That's my question. And what can be done to contain this farmer crisis, given the UK and NRIs have been so actively trying to donate for the cause of the farmer in India?
I think for the first thing is you have to go to the root of it. The farmer crisis is principally driven by two things. One is crop failure, and then the other is the economics even when crops are produced. So the crop failure is principally driven by lack of water, and it happens due to the drought. And there's a lot of subsidy that the government puts into fertilizer and seed grain and all that because it's driven by industries. But where they should be putting in that money is really into irrigation and canal projects, where the dependency on natural rainfall is reduced.
Yes.
And I mean, in Israel and in other places, they're growing crops in the middle of the desert. So why it can't be done in the middle of Maharashtra is...
Which is considered that much more fertile.
So I think that's where governments can do more. Probably the biggest culprit is that the farmer really makes very little out of the whole value chain or the food chain.
Yes.
And it's the middlemen who make all the money, all the artis and all the middlemen who make the money.
Yes.
So I think those are the three big areas, and there's of course a fourth one. So that the businesses can get involved in the second two parts.
Yes.
So there are now companies which are getting into disintermediation, CSR activity, disintermediation from farm to plate kind of a thing, which is also technology driven, and then the whole logistics chain, which is transportation and warehousing. So everybody has to contribute. There's no one answer to it. Lastly, even from overseas, companies like you mentioned, NRIs and all from here can get involved in the disintermediation of setting up sort of technology platforms which can get the food grain produced directly to the consumer.
True. Multi-layeral indeed this is, and policy changes need to be made which are more farmer friendly, which are more friendly to the land, given industrialization, urbanization today. Privatization has become the key word. But then several layers indeed. Maybe investment into drought resistant seeds, which can help in a place like Vidarbha, in a place like Telangana. But then the solutions are one thing. Tell me as a...
I have a different take on this. I think also the changing diets of the people. We are eating certain foods that we wouldn't have eaten, say, 2,000 years ago. And therefore now the farmers are growing certain foods, or, because it gets
which
them
we
more
don't
money.
want to eat.
Yeah, which, no, we do eat more of.
We're forced to eat.
Yeah, they are not the indigenous foods that were eaten, like, millets, as we were talking earlier. Millets was something that was eaten regularly in India. And now that has been overtaken by wheat.
And rice, polished rice.
Yes, so so I think changing diets and the fact that they can get more money for growing certain crops and not growing the other crops, that I think also adds that extra layer.
I fully agree with you on this, because ragi, jowar, these are some of the millets which are low calorie, low carb, provide you that much more fiber and nutrition when on your plate. But unfortunately, an Indian meal today looks a lot more of wheat and rice, which unfortunately doesn't give you that kind of nutrition that millets do. But millets have been on a constant decline, and which perhaps points to how subsidies are given to the crops which are cash oriented, and there is a better MRP, for example, when it comes to that, which is where middlemen come in and make so much money. So the problem is just so multi-layeral. But for any of us sitting in cities, even in London, for example, you're an academician. Have you been talking about it? Do you talk about the farmer crisis at all?
Well, you know, a series of successive droughts have racked the Indian rural countryside. Since 1995, there have been 300,000 farmer suicides, which is a shocking statistic by any yardstick. And the irony is, although India is an agrarian country, 60% of our economy depends on agriculture, urban India is somehow completely not sensitive to this grave tragedy that's happening in rural India.
When you talk about India in general, I'm sure you talk of politics, I'm sure you talk of cricket, but is the farmer crisis ever part of the conversation?
Yes, it is, because I think that one thing about doing NGO type of work or government aided work, but then there's a whole business model which is also emerging, like the disintermediation that we talked about earlier, and also the logistics chain which has to be built up. It needs billions of dollars of investment, which is a very profitable investment.
Yes.
So I think one of the ways that I have seen, even in places London or New York, banks, large private equity firms and large companies have been looking very much at investing into those areas because it's a profitable business and it will benefit the farmer.
And it
it's
will
a
provide
win-win
storage,
and it will
yes.
provide storage.
Storage, which is much crucial. So while we say that the production of millets has gone down, the production of other crash crops has gone up, but there is again a lack of storage, so which means there is huge wastage that goes on. And on the other hand, you have a lot of poverty, a lot of starvation that happens, and deaths of children because of starvation. So just so stark this picture is.
The other point I wanted to make is you were mentioning in the salons of London and other urban metros, but which is why this art is so important because it's provocative. It tells a story that people are not really conscious about. It provokes. It makes people think of issues that are not, directly impacting them perhaps, but are extremely relevant. It draws our attention to the very, very sorry state of affairs in rural India. It forces us to engage with these issues, and which is why this is art with heart, and which is why it's so critical.
But if you have ideas on how to perhaps not solve, but at least take a step forward to reach out to that farmer who needs us for having provided us all the food that we have been eating, I'm sure you can pick up your phone to write this email to ooe@ndtv.com. Thank you very much.